It's Lissa, and we're doing Vlogmas in the car today because I have like half an hour before I have to go to work, and I had to drop my boyfriend off because he had a flat tire and needed to get it fixed. So anyway, today we're just going to talk about some of our family traditions, what we do, what we don't do, things like that. When I was a kid, my dad worked for the state of Maryland, and he almost always had to work on Christmas, so all of our Christmas traditions were done in the morning. Generally speaking, he had to be at work by either 2 or 3, so he had to leave around 1 or 2 so he could get ready between noon and 1. So for us, Christmas always started pretty early. We would have our stockings available. We were allowed to open those as soon as we got up. Whatever was in the stocking, we could play with, and if we had any big toys that couldn't get wrapped, we could play with those as well. But we were not allowed to make enough noise that could wake our parents. Generally speaking, the night before, my dad would have gone home around midnight, so he needed to get his sleep, and my mom usually would stay up to wait for him and put together any toys that needed to be built, as well as, just generally waiting for him to come home from work. Which is why we were allowed to get into our stockings, play with anything that was in there, and anything that was open, but we had to be quiet. If we woke our parents, we weren't allowed to open any presents until after lunch. And if, Dad had to leave before we could open the presents, we couldn't open presents until he came home, so we wouldn't open presents until, the next day. So I don't think we ever broke that rule. I think we were always pretty good about it, because that was the rule, my entire life. That was always the rule: don't wake your parents, or you don't get to open your presents. There's also the rule at my grandparents' house. If you woke up the grandparents, when we were staying with my dad's parents in Baltimore, if you woke up any of the adults, Christmas presents were put off until the afternoon, or you weren't allowed to open your presents until everyone else had opened their gifts. And that's not so much fun. So for us, Christmas morning started with the stockings. My mom would wake up generally between 8 and 9. She'd come downstairs and we would have orange cinnamon rolls, which are one of my favorite things to eat. My sister actually doesn't like them, sadly, so she doesn't eat them when we have them at our house now. When she comes to visit for Christmas, I still make orange cinnamon rolls. She won't eat them, but my daughter loves them. And when I was a kid, and we haven't really done this tradition much, this was something we did at my house when I was a kid, at my grandparents' house when I was a kid, but we haven't really adopted it so much. Someone would wear a stupid Santa elf hat, and they were Santa's helper, and they passed out all the presents, which was usually a lot of fun because it meant that you got to open the very last gift, because if you were Santa's elf, you got your present last in the circle. So everyone opens a gift, they open one present, and then you kind of go around again. And Santa's elf always got to open the one last, and so they got to open the very last present. All attention was on them, blah, blah, blah. It was a trade-off. And every year, Santa's elf or helper or whatever, it was always somebody different. We don't really do that, but now there's only 3 of us in my family. It's myself, my boyfriend, and my daughter. Whereas when I was a kid, there were 5 of us, and if we were at my grandparents' house, there could be as many as 18 of us at a time. So having one person passing out gifts kind of made a lot of sense. So generally speaking, after we do presents, we have lunch. Lunch is not set in stone. My dad's favorite thing to have for Christmas dinner or Christmas lunch or whatever you wanted to call it was roast beef, which we of course always called roast beast because, how the Grinch stole Christmas, that's the thing. And then on Christmas Day, we would go to my mother's parents' house because they only lived about a half an hour away from us, and they lived very close to where my dad worked. So if we had enough time, or if he was off for Christmas, which again almost never happened, we would go to my grandparents' house, we'd have presents there. He'd stay for as long as he could, and then my grandmother had Christmas dinner all set up for us for around supper time. As far as the rest of my family, we would usually go to Baltimore in January and have Christmas with my dad's parents and his siblings and all of my cousins on that side of my family. And usually it was a 2 or 3 day affair. The difference is between having Christmas at my mother's parents versus my father's parents. My grandmother, she made a big dinner. We sat down at the table. It was very kind of like formal, traditional Christmas dinner. Whereas my Grammy, my father's mother, they had a big, huge, like, smorgasbord of food out there. They had, like, a hot table and a cold table. Basically, my grandmother did not want to spend all day cooking for 18 people, so she would cook things up in advance. There would be hot dishes, cold dishes, and you could just eat however much you wanted, when you wanted, all day long. And I absolutely loved that. I would love to, like, do that myself, but again, there's only 3 of us, so having, like, a huge spread is not really, it's not really practical. I would love to do it. It's just, it doesn't really work for 3 people now. If I had, 15 people coming to my house for Christmas, then I would totally do just like this smorgasbord spread, and it would be great. My father's family is also Swedish, so having, like, that whole setup kind of makes sense traditionally from their side of the family. Oh, and for Christmas Eve traditions, we didn't do this when I was a kid, but we did this with my daughter. We all get pajamas, and for Santa, as kids, we left out a plate of cookies and a bottle of Coca-Cola. The reasoning behind that, my mom always said, oh, Santa probably could use a caffeine boost. He's tired of milk. He needs a little pick-me-up, so we'd leave him Coca-Cola. In all actuality, Santa was lactose intolerant, so we left out a bottle of Coke for him instead, and that's a tradition that we have continued with my daughter. I don't like milk. I was lactose intolerant as a child and as a teenager, and I've outgrown it, but I don't like the way milk tastes because I wasn't really able to drink it very much. So we still leave out a plate of cookies and either a glass of Coke or a bottle of Coke for Santa on Christmas Eve. So yeah, that's pretty much like our Christmas traditions in a nutshell as far as like Christmas Eve and Christmas Day is concerned. We do stuff like throughout the month. We, of course, make ornaments for the tree every year. We try to go out and see the lights on the houses. We don't do that every year, or we'll just sort of do it kind of at spur of the moment where it's like, oh, we're driving home. Hey, let's go look at a couple of houses, see what their light setup looks like. We pick out one new ornament for my daughter every year. Sometimes we go to Hallmark, sometimes we don't, sometimes we go to Target because they have a huge assortment of ornaments. And of course we do traditional things like watch movies and have hot cocoa or just different crafts and things throughout, the December season. But again, those are not our Christmas Eve, Christmas Day traditions, just the PJs, Coca-Cola, breakfast, things like that. Anyway, I'm trying to really keep on top of doing Vlogmas this year. It's not exactly the easiest thing for me. I've never been a daily vlogger before, and I'm definitely trying. Like I said before, I want to do more videos. I want to post more often. I've definitely become more sort of present on my Facebook page, That Convention Girl, if you guys are interested. I try to post more on my Instagram. Sometimes it's hit or miss. I tend to do it for a couple days and then I'll forget it exists for like a week. And then with Twitter just, it almost never happens. I do have a Twitter. I almost never post anything on there. I definitely want to get better at it. And I definitely will post more things as I go through the convention season. And hopefully I'll post more as I do, Vlogmas, because I'll have more content to post over, the different. So yeah, if you are liking the Vlogmas, So yeah, if you like this video, I guess, let me know, thumbs up, subscribe, all that YouTuber shtick that usually comes with a video. I'm not doing this to try to become a YouTuber or become rich and famous off the internet. That would be cool, but not really my main goal here. So I will leave my Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter handles in the comments. See if I've posted anything, and if I have, cool, and if not, oh well.